I can still recall how the sunlight slipped through the blinds that morning, painting striped patterns across the kitchen table. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee lingered, mingling with the familiar trace of Jessica's perfume, the one she had worn for so many years. It was meant to be another quiet start to our day, a simple breakfast shared between husband and wife. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then, she let out a deep breath, placed her mug down gently, and uttered the words that turned everything upside down. I want a divorce. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. My thoughts scrambled, searching for a different meaning. But there was no doubt in her voice, no falter in her tone. The calmness with which she spoke left no room for questioning her intent. My stomach twisted into knots. All I could muster was a faint, broken what? Jessica didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she reached into the drawer next to her, took out a business card, and slid it across the table like she was handing over the contact info for a repairman. "Talk to my lawyer," she said, her voice as neutral as ever. I stared at the card, unable to move or speak. The name on it meant nothing to me, yet the weight of what it represented was suffocating. It felt like I was suddenly watching my own life from the outside, witnessing a stranger tell me that everything I thought we had was now gone. Still, I needed to understand. I had to ask, "Jessica, why?" That's when she finally looked at me. The expression in her eyes sent a chill through me. There was no sorrow, no guilt, just a steady, unwavering certainty. "Because it's time," she said. And that was it. No more explanation. No sign of doubt. No words of apology. She stood up, took her coffee with her, and walked away as if it was just another day. I remained frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Everything felt surreal, like the ground beneath me had shifted. But what came afterward made it clear. This was just the start. That very same day, I called the number on the card. I told myself I needed clarity, needed to hear it from someone else, to find a way to hold on to what remained. I wasn't ready to let go without knowing the reason behind it all. When I got to the lawyer's office, I braced for formality, calm professionalism, maybe even a bit of cold detachment. But as soon as I introduced myself, the atmosphere changed. The man representing Jessica looked up from his desk and instantly went pale. His hands trembled as he fumbled with the papers in front of him. He recognized me, and that recognition seemed to frighten him. I didn't realize it then, but his reaction was the first sign that something far deeper was happening. From the moment I entered that office, the unease hit me. The scent in the air was a mix of old documents and budget cologne, but there was something else beneath it, something unplaceable, unsettling. Perhaps it was just the pressure of my thoughts weighing down on me, or maybe it was the fleeting glance the receptionist gave me before quickly looking away, as if she knew something I didn't. The office space itself seemed ordinary enough. Soft lighting, shelves filled with legal books that looked more decorative than useful. But when I came face to face with Elliot Pritchard, the lawyer Jessica had chosen, that's when the oddness truly began. He didn't fit the image I had imagined. He looked to be in his mid-40s, balding, wearing a pricey suit. But it wasn't his appearance that stood out. It was how he reacted when I introduced myself. His entire posture stiffened. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the door as if he was planning an exit. He swallowed hard, and when he went to grab his pen, his fingers struggled, like he'd forgotten how to hold it. "Mr. Callahan," he finally said, his voice thin and uneven. "Please, take a seat." I sat down, keeping my eyes locked on his face. "So, Elliot," I said, stretching out his name on purpose. "Jessica told me to speak with you. Said you'd handle everything." He nodded too quickly. "Yes, of course. Your wife?" Jessica, she." He cleared his throat, shuffled the papers again, and avoided looking directly at me. I leaned in slightly. "Why are you acting like you're scared of me?" His head jerked up, and for the first time, he looked me in the eye. I'm not nervous," he said. That was a lie. It couldn't have been more obvious. "You sure about that?" I pressed. "Because it seems like you saw something terrifying when I walked through that door." He fell silent, opened his mouth, then shut it again. His eyes dropped to the stack of documents in front of him, as though the right words might be hidden among the pages. Then, he let out a stilted chuckle, shaking his head. "I assure you, Mr. Callahan, there's nothing to be worried about. He adjusted his tie. "I deal with many cases. Some are more complex than others. And is mine one of those?" I asked, not hiding my irritation. Another pause. I was reaching my limit. I felt drained, confused, and barely keeping it together. My marriage had just been torn apart without warning, and now her attorney looked like he'd seen a ghost. I needed answers, and I wasn't about to leave without them. You know something, I said firmly, my voice edged with urgency. Why don't we quit pretending and get straight to the point? I said, watching as Elliot exhaled slowly, his palms pressed firmly against the desk like he needed the support to stay grounded. He glanced nervously toward the office door, then met my gaze again. After a moment of thick silence, he finally opened his mouth. There's something you need to know, Mr. Callahan. A sudden chill ran through me. What is it? I asked. Elliot hesitated once more, caught in some invisible conflict, but before he could utter a word, the office door flew open. Jessica stood in the doorway, her expression carved in fury, her eyes blazing with something more intense than mere frustration. She didn't look startled to find me there. On the contrary, she seemed livid. What do you think you're doing here? She demanded, her tone cutting through the air like a blade. I rose slowly to my feet, heart pounding like a drum inside my chest. Just having a conversation with my wife's attorney, I said evenly, trying to understand why he seems like he's about to faint just from talking to me. Jessica's lips tightened into a cold, unforgiving line. Then she spun toward Elliot and barked out, not one word. As I looked between them, a cold, creeping feeling crawled up my back. That was it. There was something going on. Something big. And I was about to uncover it. Her command echoed in the room like the crack of a whip. Elliot froze in place, his mouth slightly open, caught between fear and the instinct to obey. The air in the room turned colder, and that's when it clicked. Whatever this was, whatever had Elliot on edge, Jessica was at the center of it. I took a slow breath, eyes still on her. Not a word, I repeated, my voice level. That's an interesting choice, Jess. Because he was just about to say something important. Jessica stepped into the office and shut the door behind her. You don't need to hear anything, she said, her voice calm but authoritative. Just sign the papers and let's put this behind us. I gave a dry, bitter laugh and shook my head. Put it behind us? You spring a divorce on me out of nowhere, refuse to give me even one real explanation, and now your lawyer looks like he's about to confess to something criminal? No, Jess. I'm not signing anything until I get the full story. Elliot exhaled, clearly struggling to keep his composure. His fingers twitched against the wooden surface like he wanted to speak but couldn't. For a brief second, I thought he might actually tell me the truth. But then Jessica shifted slightly, giving him a pointed look. Whatever courage he had seemed to evaporate. It was painfully obvious. The way his hands clenched into fists. The way he swallowed hard like he was holding back something heavy. Jessica hadn't needed to say another word. Her look alone had shut him down. I scanned their faces, my gut twisting with unease. What is going on here? Jessica rubbed her temples and let out a frustrated sigh. There's nothing going on, Nathan. Nothing? I repeated with a scoff. You're lying, and you know it. And I swear, if you don't start talking, I'll make sure this so-called nothing becomes very, very public. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. A trace of fear flickered across her face before she managed to conceal it, straightening her posture. You really don't want to go down that road. I stared at her, piecing together the strange tension, the desperation to keep me silent, and Elliot's unwillingness to speak. And then it dawned on me. I turned my eyes back to Elliot. You're not just her lawyer, are you? His entire posture stiffened. Jessica quickly stepped between us. Nathan, don't. But I was already moving forward. Tell me the truth, Elliot. You're involved in more than just the legal work, aren't you? You know something about Jessica. Something I've been kept in the dark about. Elliot's breaths came faster, shallower. His eyes flicked toward Jessica, then back at me, like a man caught at the edge of a cliff. He began, barely audible. Jessica's jaw tensed. Elliot, she warned sharply. That was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't simply about a marriage ending. This was deeper. There were secrets here, Jessica's secrets. And Elliot was tangled up in them. I moved in closer, voice lowered. Are you having an affair, Jess? She flinched. It was small, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. That tiny jolt, like a crack in her carefully maintained facade. She quickly composed herself, rolling her eyes in mock annoyance. Don't be absurd. But it was already too late. I'd seen the truth in that moment. And now, there was no turning back. I turned to Elliot again, eyes locked on his pale face. How long have you been in a relationship with my wife? His face drained of color completely. Jessica let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Oh my goodness, Nathan. Are you really accusing? I'm not talking to you. I cut in, my tone cold and direct. I'm asking him. Elliot's hands gripped the edges of the desk like he was bracing himself. He didn't respond. Not a word of denial. Just heavy, damning silence. Jessica turned to him, furious. Are you seriously going to just sit there? Say something. Elliot's Adam's apple moved visibly as he swallowed hard. It's complicated, he finally muttered. I let out a slow laugh, one completely devoid of humor. So there it was, confirmation I hadn't even needed anymore. Jessica raked her fingers through her hair and released a sharp breath. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. It felt like I had taken a hit straight to the stomach. My wife, my own wife. And the man seated across from me? The very one she had chosen to oversee our divorce? The man who'd been visibly uneasy from the moment I stepped into the room? He wasn't worried about me. He was terrified of how I'd react once the truth was out in the open. I inhaled deeply, centering myself. I wasn't going to unravel, not for them. I wouldn't deliver the breakdown they were probably bracing for. Instead, I offered a calm, deliberate smile. It was the kind of smile that made Jessica shift in her seat. You're right, I said quietly. It really is complicated. I reached over and picked up one of the documents on the desk, the same ones Jessica had been practically begging me to sign. I gave it a quick scan, then lifted my gaze. But let me tell you something, Jess. You're going to wish you had gone about this differently. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. What's that supposed to mean? I placed the paper back down with care and met her stare head-on. It means I've had enough of being blindsided. And from here on out, I'm going to make this process just as tangled for you. Jessica didn't respond. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but the words never came. For once, she wasn't steering the conversation. That shift in power? That was my first small but solid win. I stood up and adjusted my jacket, nodding in Elliot's direction. Nice meeting you, I said coolly. Without waiting for a reply, I walked out of the office. And for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I actually felt like I had regained some control. As I stepped outside, my heart was racing, but it wasn't sadness or despair that gripped me anymore. What stirred inside was something far more potent. A steady, rising sense of clarity. Over the past few days, I had been consumed by disbelief, floundering in emotional chaos, unable to grasp how Jessica could betray me like this. But now, I had something far more valuable, the truth. Or at least the beginning of it. Jessica had been unfaithful. That part was no longer up for debate. But this wasn't some meaningless fling. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. She had deliberately inserted her lover into the very process meant to untangle our lives. That meant every step had been thought through. This wasn't just about dissolving our marriage. It was about controlling how it unraveled. And I refused to let that happen. I climbed into my car and gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to calm the erratic rhythm of my breathing. Sitting in that office had made me feel like a stranger in my own story, like someone had handed me a role in a play I'd never agreed to. But those days were done. I was ready to start asking the questions they clearly didn't want me to ask. Reaching for my phone, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the one person who could help me find perspective. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Nate? Hey, man, what's going on? It was Liam, my best friend since college. He'd been by my side through everything. Broken relationships, failed job hunts, and every emotional storm in between. If anyone could help me untangle this mess, it was him. I need to talk, I said, my voice low and tight. It's about Jessica. There was a short pause on the other end before he replied. Where are you? Downtown. Just walked out of a meeting with her lawyer. Another silence, then a sigh. Meet me at Rusty's in 10. I didn't even have to think about it. Rusty's had always been our spot. A dim, no-frills bar where the drinks were strong and the bartender minded his business. I drove there without saying a word, my thoughts looping endlessly. By the time I arrived and pulled into the parking lot, Liam was already there, leaning against his car, his expression tense. He straightened up as I approached. All right, he said. Tell me everything. We made our way inside, found a booth in the back, and ordered drinks. Once we were settled, I laid it all out, Jessica's betrayal, her refusal to explain herself, how her lawyer looked like he might pass out when I entered the room, and how I had cornered them into exposing the truth. Liam stayed quiet as I spoke, his face unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back in the booth and let out a long breath. Man, Nate. Yeah, I murmured, taking a sip of my drink. The burn from the whiskey helped ground me. Something about this feels off. It's not just an affair. It's more than that. He began drumming his fingers against the table, thinking. Then, finally, he asked the question I hadn't wanted to face. Do you think this is about money? I frowned slightly. What are you getting at? Leaning in, he lowered his voice. Look at the situation. If she simply wanted to leave, she could have walked away, asked for a separation, moved out, and been done with it. But she didn't. She's hiding things. She involved the guy she's involved with in the legal process. Why? Because she has a plan. And if Jessica was scheming, chances were high that money was at the heart of it. I exhaled slowly, the weight of that suspicion finally solidifying after Liam voiced it. The possibility had lingered in my mind for days, but now it felt undeniable. Jessica wasn't just walking away, she was plotting. My jaw tensed. I had to uncover her true intentions. Liam gave a sharp nod. And quickly, I reached for my phone, thoughts whirling. There were a few paths I could take. I could comb through our bank statements, search for anything unusual. I could consult a lawyer and find out where I stood legally. Yet, none of those options would reveal the complete picture. That was something only Jessica could provide. One way or another, I was going to get the truth. Liam must have caught the intensity on my face, because he grinned and shook his head. I've seen you angry before, but this is something different. Setting my drink aside, I looked at him firmly. She thinks she's outsmarting me, Liam. But she's forgotten one thing. He tilted his head. And what's that? Meeting his gaze, I allowed a confident smile to form. I know how to play dirty too. The second I stepped out of Rusty's, I knew going home wasn't an option, not yet. There was too much unknown, and I refused to sit back while Jessica took control of the story. She had already laid the groundwork, steering everything from behind the scenes, believing she held all the cards. She was wrong. Sliding into my car, I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my thoughts racing. If this was more than just a simple breakup, if Jessica had some larger plan, then I needed to outpace her. That meant digging into places she would never expect me to look. And I knew just where to begin: the past. Jessica and I had been married for nearly 8 years. During that time, I had never once questioned how she handled our finances. She liked managing the budget, not because I couldn't, but because she thrived on being in control. That should have been my first clue. With Liam's words echoing in my mind, I followed my gut and headed straight to the bank instead of going home. It was late, but our online banking would reveal more than enough. I pulled into a dimly lit corner of the parking lot and unlocked my phone. At first glance, everything seemed fine. Mortgage payments, grocery runs, the occasional restaurant bill. But as I scrolled further, something caught my eye and my stomach dropped. There it was. A pattern. Every few weeks, there were hefty cash withdrawals, large sums disappearing without a trace. They hadn't been transfers. These were direct withdrawals. Thousands at a time. And they'd started about 6 months ago. My fingers tightened around the phone. What was going on? Jessica didn't gamble. She wasn't secretly supporting family. And if these were ordinary expenses, why hadn't she brought them up? Scrolling deeper, I found hotel charges. Not just one, but multiple bookings. Different dates, all in the same general area. And then, everything clicked into place. The secrecy, the sudden push for legal action, the weird behavior over the past few months. This wasn't a rash decision. Jessica had been planning it meticulously. Every move had been calculated. But to what end? I stared at the screen, the pattern as clear as day. She had been quietly draining money. But not just to leave, that didn't make sense. If she were just trying to escape, she wouldn't have rushed to get legal backing so soon. Unless she was setting things up so she could take everything with her. I clenched my jaw again. If that was her real goal, I wasn't just dealing with betrayal, I was facing a complete takedown. I needed evidence. And I needed help. If Jessica had been covering her tracks, I couldn't rely on my own abilities to uncover the truth. I needed someone with expertise. Someone who could trace the things I couldn't even see. I scrolled through my contacts until I landed on a name I hadn't thought of in years: Ethan Reynolds. He wasn't a close friend, but he owed me. A private investigator, the real kind, not the ones you see in crime dramas. Ethan handled cases that involved fraud, missing persons, and yes, cheating spouses. If anyone could trace Jessica's trail, it was him. I hit the call button. After 2 rings, he answered. Nathan? Wow, it's been years. What's going on? I didn't hesitate. I need you to look into someone. He paused. Who? My wife. A moment of silence passed before he let out a low whistle. Didn't expect that one. Can you do it? No question. But it's gonna cost. I gave a bitter smile. That's fine. I've got more at stake than just money. He let out a short laugh. All right. Send me the details. I'll start right away. I ended the call, my pulse still rapid. This was the turning point. Jessica might have been planning this for months, confident in her control, but now? Now the tables had turned. I held the reins, and I was ready to uncover the full extent of her deception. When the morning light filtered in, there was only one thing occupying my thoughts: staying ahead of Jessica. She had spent months meticulously orchestrating her departure, carefully aligning every step to benefit her. But she'd miscalculated. She assumed I wouldn't catch on. Without wasting time, I opened my laptop and logged into the shared accounts once more. The same alarming withdrawals from the night before stared back at me, consistent, hefty amounts withdrawn over the past half year. This wasn't casual spending. It was someone meticulously preparing for a major life shift. I called Ethan, my friend and private investigator, who was already digging into her recent activities. He answered right away. "You were right to be suspicious, Nathan," he said. "Your wife has been moving money around, bit by bit, across different accounts. Nothing technically illegal, but it's all been kept under wraps. And there's more, she's been directly communicating with her boss about these transfers." I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow breath. "So, you're saying they're planning something together?" "That's what the evidence points to," Ethan confirmed. "They've exchanged messages, nothing explicit, but it's clear she's being cautious. She knows how to avoid leaving a trail. But I did uncover something else. She booked a one-way flight. It leaves next week." That news landed like a blow to the chest. Jessica wasn't just leaving our relationship, she was vanishing altogether. I closed the laptop, my thoughts spinning. She had been laying the groundwork for this escape all along. This wasn't merely about cheating or divorce. She intended to disappear completely, and she was counting on me to stay clueless. That evening, I put on my best performance. Jessica walked in as if everything was completely normal, as if she hadn't been plotting her departure for months. She had no idea I was already several steps ahead. Greeting her casually, I pulled out a chair for her at the kitchen table. "I was thinking," I said smoothly, "maybe we could share one last dinner together, before the paperwork is finalized." She paused briefly, then smiled as though everything was going her way. "That sounds nice," she replied. She truly believed she had already won. For the next hour, I played the role of the devoted husband to perfection, preparing her favorite dish, opening a bottle of her preferred wine, setting the kind of cozy scene she used to love. I made sure she was at ease, comfortable, unsuspecting. Then, as dinner wrapped up, I reached for my phone and gently placed it on the table between us. Jessica's smile wavered. "What's that?" she asked. I took a casual sip from my glass. "Just a notification." The phone screen lit up, revealing a fresh alert from our joint account, a significant transfer, executed just minutes earlier. Her face tensed as she read it. "Nathan, I don't know what." I raised my hand to cut her off. "Don't. I already know." She sat back, her gaze flickering nervously between me and the phone. 6 months, I said evenly. "That's how long you've been making those transfers." Small enough at first to avoid suspicion, but over time, the total became impossible to ignore. "And now, you've made your final move." Her fingers clenched lightly against the tabletop. "I don't know what you mean." I offered a smile that carried no kindness. "You booked a flight, Jessica." In that instant, I saw it, the first fissure in her confidence. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. She was struggling to respond. "You were never planning a simple divorce," I continued, my voice calm. "You were orchestrating a complete break, a new beginning somewhere far away. And you assumed I'd be too distracted to catch on." Jessica swallowed, clearly shaken. "That's not it." "Don't," I said again, reclining in my chair. "It doesn't matter why you did it. What I want to know is how you imagined this would end." She remained silent for a moment before finally speaking the truth. "I didn't think you'd find out," she admitted plainly. No emotion, just the facts. I nodded slowly. "Well, I did. And now? You're going to have to live with the outcome." The following morning, we sat across from each other in a law office, the atmosphere cold and impersonal. Her expression gave away nothing. In front of her, a neatly arranged stack of divorce papers waited for signatures. She had lost, and she knew it. "I'll sign," she murmured quietly. I nodded once. Smart decision. There was no yelling, no resistance. She understood she had no more cards to play. One after the other, she signed the documents, ending with a soft sigh as she set the pen aside. I studied her for a moment, wondering if she felt anything, remorse, guilt, or perhaps just disappointment that her scheme had failed. Whatever it was, it didn't matter to me anymore. As I stepped out of that office, I felt something I hadn't in what felt like ages, a deep, liberating sense of relief. Jessica had spent months plotting the most painful exit she could manage. She lied, manipulated, and tried to walk away with everything. But in the end, she was the one who had to leave it all behind. 1 week later, I packed my things and moved to a new city, ready to begin again. No more emotional baggage. No lingering regrets. Simply knowing that I had endured one of the toughest experiences of my life and emerged stronger gave me a sense of pride I hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, while sitting alone at a cozy coffee shop, observing the flow of people and the rhythm of life outside the window, a thought settled in my mind. I had spent far too long trying to make sense of someone who had never truly valued me. But that part of my journey was over. From that moment on, I stopped dwelling on the past. The road ahead belonged to me, and this time, I was steering it.